Okay, chapter 120 we're going to do. Now, Kuf Chav, chapter 120, just to mention, we'll probably finish this chapter tomorrow, if not very quickly, early, in the section next week. And then we're going to start at the beginning, at chapter 1. So those who have multi-volume editions of the Kitzur Shulchan Aruch, the Bridge Code of Jewish Law, just to give you a heads up for next week to have the volume 1 ready. So we're doing chapter 120. We're just continuing from what we did before the break. So the Kitzur Shulchan Aruch, the Bridge Code of Jewish Law, chapter 120, Hilchos Sfira Sa'oima B'mei Sfira, the laws of counting the Sfira and the days of the Sfira. Now, we did mention briefly, like we sort of summarized a few points before the break, but now we'll try and learn it properly and then move on from there. So, Aleph, number 1, Belal Sheni Shel Pesach. So, starting the second night of Pesach. Lis by Sfira Sa'oima, we count the Sfira Sa'oima, so we count each day. So, for some reason, didn't start yet. Today is the 17th day of the Omer, so you can just say today is the 17th day of the Omer, and we also count the weeks, so you say which is 2 weeks and 3 days of the Omer. So the Sofer Me'umad, and we count standing. Now, ideally, that is, it's so we count standing, try and do all mitzvahs standing if we can, to give the respect. A mitzvah, he lispa takef bischalas halayla. The mitzvah ideally is to count right at the beginning of the night, meaning once the 3 average stars have come out, it's totally dark. Which means after stars come up, but that means the definition has 3 average size. So straight away, not to postpone it. B'diavad. Now, after the fact, if we didn't count right at the beginning of the night, Zmana kol halayla, you can count the entire night. So the entire night is the time for counting. We can count with a bracha. We're soon going to discuss if someone didn't count at night, you can count during the day without a bracha, but that's just first talking about the ideal counting. Now, just to give a bit of background, maybe not everyone's familiar, the Sfira was for several purposes. The main origin is that when we came out of Mitzrayim, came out of Egypt, Pesach, there was an understanding that in order to be able to receive the Torah, obviously we didn't know what it was at that stage, but in order to receive the Torah. Now, in order to receive the Torah, there has to be some preparation. We have to prepare ourselves. So first of all, people are very excited. So when people are very excited about something, we count the days, right? Imagine we, as a group, maybe we'll do this one day, go on a trip to Israel together or something like that. We'd all be counting down the days. 10 days to go, 9 days to go. We'd all be very excited. So that's one idea of the counting. What's different, though, is that normally when we're excited, we're counting down to somewhere. That's exactly what we do. We count down. 10 days, 9 days. What we notice about the Sfira is we count up. Because there was an understanding, we had an understanding that since it's not only about our excitement, but there has to be some level of preparation. So we count up, meaning on the first day, I've done 1 day of preparation. I've improved myself 1 step. On the second day, I've improved myself 2 steps. So we're not only counting the days, we're counting our achievements and how far we've been able to develop ourselves. And it's really, it's a time of spiritual development. That's really what these days are for. So we count right at the beginning of the evening. Now, just to give a bit of background about the next point, in Europe, one of the most common professions was itinerant beggar. Now, you might think that sounds like a bit of a funny profession, but unfortunately, due to laws in Eastern Europe, Jews were banned from many professions. And as a matter of fact, the Tsar Nikolai, he came up with a plan to get rid of all the Jews in the Russian Empire. Right? His plan was he's going to make life so bad, the conditions so bad, that a third will immigrate. And we see there was massive waves of immigration to America, to Australia, to Britain. A third will die, God forbid, and a third will convert, God forbid. A third, he wasn't an ethnic anti-Semite, he was a religious anti-Semite. And at that time, he took over, various parts of what had been Poland, the different things, and there were tremendous amount of Jews, and the life was very difficult. It was so difficult that the only way to survive really was to cheat. And you had black markets and various things, and not to glorify crime, God forbid, but under those circumstances was the only way to survive. And so, for an example, it was so bad that the city of Minsk actually created a second cemetery, and they made a tombstone for everyone who was alive in the town. And if someone got caught, or the government caught onto them, the soldiers would come to arrest the person. They say, where's Uncle Beryl Schmerl? And they say, oh, he's passed away. And they said, prove it. And they take him to the cemetery and show him the tombstone. And then he would, change his name. And that's how it was. It was pretty bad times. So even after the community had all these made-up jobs, like the shamash, the assistant, the attendant in the synagogue on Tuesdays, and the one on Thursdays, and the assistant to the Tuesday, and various things, there was still like a 40% unemployment rate. It was a terrible time. So there was a lot of itinerant, beggars just travel from town to town, and often they slept in the shul or in a area attached to the shul. So what happened in Europe is that many shuls had the custom of making Kiddush Friday night and Yom Tov evening in shul as part of the service for the people who were sleeping there, because that was their Kiddush, so they could eat. Many shuls, maybe even most shuls, have sort of abandoned that nowadays. It's not the Chabad custom to say the Kiddush at that time. But it's because, thank God, we don't have people having to live in the communal homeless shelters attached to the shul. We're not in that situation. But that's the background to the next halakha. We're going to talk about making Kiddush, and maybe the shul you go to. You might have a Kiddush after the service, but talking about as part of the service. Anyway, basic Knesses in the shul, B'leil Shabbos v'Yontiv, on the night of Shabbos v'Yontiv, so from the Acha Kiddush, we count the Sfira after we make Kiddush in the service. Now, why do we say Kiddush first? Because we've got two mitzvahs here. We've got the mitzvah of the holiness of the day, the Kiddush, and the mitzvah to count Sfira. And we want to do the holiness of the day first. So that's when it's part of the service. Because if you have a Kiddush after the service, then you've already counted Sfira during the service. But Motzi Shabbos, now Saturday night, the Yom Tov, and the night after the Yom Tov, Sofrim Kodim Havdalah. Now we count before Havdalah. So again, this is when you're talking about making Havdalah as part of the service for the people that lived in the shul. So if Havdalah is part of the service, they would say Havdalah before Aleinu, before the concluding part of the service. Because we want to postpone taking out the day, out the Yom Tov. So we make Kiddush first when the Yom Tov comes in, because we want to bring Shabbos or Yom Tov in earlier, but then we postpone the Havdalah with the counting, because we want to keep Shabbos or Yom Tov longer. Now, Shchal Yom Tov Achron, b'Motzei Shabbos, if the last day Pesach falls out on a Saturday night, so in which case we're going to make Havdalah and Kiddush on the same cup. So we understand Kiddush comes first, Havdalah comes after, but here we got both at the same time. So what do we do? She'omer Kiddush Havdalah kois echad, and we're going to say Kiddush and Havdalah 1 cup. Sofrim gam kain koidem. We also we count the Sfira first. Aches Havdalah, to postpone Havdalah, because the Shabbos is going to take the priority. So we're going to count the Sfira in Shul, hopefully the first moment possible. Normally right before the Eleno prayer. And if we didn't, we'll count throughout the night. Base number 2. Now, Mishishachach kol layla suffer. Someone they forgot. The whole night went past. So if they forgot to count in the evening service, no problem. They'll count at 3 o'clock in the morning. But now the whole evening's gone. It's now daytime. And then they remember. So what do? Yisbay b'yoyim b'loy bracha. You can count that day without a blessing, but we can count that time. Likewise, if you realize you counted the wrong day the night before. Okay, so which is the same as not counting. You count during the day. And then you keep counting, you continue the count of all the other nights with a blessing. Now, for some reason, a person forgot the entire day as well. They didn't count at night, they forgot the entire day, and now it's the next night. So they can keep counting all the other nights, but without a blessing. Now, the reason that we don't make a blessing is because it's not clear if the counting of the Omer is one big mitzvah or each night is its own individual mitzvah. So if it's one big mitzvah, then you miss a night, that's it, it's all over. There's no point even counting. If each night is an individual mitzvah, then it doesn't matter which nights you missed. Every other night, its own mitzvah, count with a bracha. So since we're not sure, so if someone missed, we keep counting in case each night is its own mitzvah. But we do without a bracha, without a blessing, just in case it was one big mitzvah. You know, we don't want to say a blessing. We don't want to say Hashem's name for no reason. The im nistapek loy, im safa b'layla loy. Now, if you don't know if you counted at night or not, you can't remember. I think I counted last night, I'm not sure. Or you're not sure you counted the right number last night. Even though you didn't count during the day afterwards, nevertheless, you can continue to count the rest of the nights of the blessing. Now, this is actually, hopefully I'm not getting too technical, and please pull me up if I do. This is called a svek, a double doubt. So whenever we have one doubt, we'll continue without a blessing. If we have a double doubt, svek, then we'll continue with a blessing. So what's the double doubt? Now, double doubt has to work both ways. So in this case, it's like this. Did I count last night or not? One doubt. Now, even if I didn't count, maybe each night is its own mitzvah. So I'm still good to go. It goes that way. And then it goes back the other way. Maybe each night's own mitzvah, maybe it's one big mitzvah. But then if it is one big mitzvah, maybe I actually did count last night. So since you got two doubts as opposed to one, that allows you to continue with the blessing. Right, so that's a concept in sex fake. You know, I know it's not really relevant unless you live on the east coast of Australia, which I'm sure you all aspire to. You know, it's a wonderful place. But there's a doubt where the halachic date line is. Now, one of the views is that the halachic date line cuts through Australia almost at the east coast. Now, the way the halakhic date line works is it doesn't cut through land, so it goes round the land mass. It like bends, goes around the mass and comes back. So, if that opinion was correct, it's not how we actually rule in actuality in practice. But if it was, then if you would go to the beach in the east coast of Australia on a Sunday, and once it's 10 tefachim deep, so about 40 inches deep, you swim out about 6 feet, it's yesterday, because you would have crossed the halakhic date line. So if you went on a Sunday and you go out for a swim, imagine you go on your surfboard, you got to take a Kiddush cup with you to make Kiddush and Shabbos. Or when you get back, you got to make Havdalah, right? So, according to this, if a person would miss Sphira one day, they could go out on a pier out into the water, count yesterday's Sphira, come back, and now you got yourself a double doubt. So you can keep counting with the blessing. Maybe this is the date line, maybe it's not the date line. Even if it isn't the date line, maybe it's each night's a separate mitzvah, and it works the other way as well. Maybe each night is a separate mitzvah, maybe it's one big mitzvah. Even if it is one mitzvah, or maybe I crossed the date line and I counted yesterday. So there you go, time travel. That's they're actually going to make a movie about it, the time travel of Sphira. Okay, so that's so again. So whenever we only have one doubt, then we will keep counting, but without a blessing. But once it's two doubts, the sake a double doubt, then we can count with a blessing. So next scenario is like this.
Ezra, I'm sorry. You had his hand up.
Yeah.
So do you have a question?
No, right, yeah. No, I had my hand up. So Sveka Lekula is basically what you're describing, and that's on a banan.
Well, probably counting Sphira today is the Rabban anyway, but the Sveka even the Rabbanon can. It's not necessarily even the rice. It's not necessarily the kula. In this case, here it's a matter: do you make a bracha or not? So when we don't make a bracha, is the kula. It's Safek bracha is the hakel. If so, in other words, we'll normally say in English we say, when in doubt, do without, all right? Because since we have a doubt, we don't want to say a blessing in case it's for no reason. We want to say Hashem's name for nothing. But once we have the double doubt, so that makes the doubt small enough that we are able to take the risk, if that's the right word, to be able to make a bracha with Hashem's name. Okay. But even in the rice, even a Torah law, you sometimes a sveka, you have double doubt, in areas of kashrus. There's areas where it goes as well. It's not only the Rabbanon. Okay, so number 3, Gimel. So from sunset onwards, which between sunset and nightfall is possible night. So from then onwards, someone asked someone, how many nights is it tonight? What's the Sphira tonight? Now the problem's going to be, if someone asks me, what do we count tonight? And I haven't counted yet. And I say, tonight's 17.
Then you're done.
Well, then I've counted already. And therefore, I can't count with a blessing afterwards. So I'm stuck. So what do you do? Right? Well, if you don't say La'omer, if you don't say today is, if you just said 17 is not an issue, but if you say today is, that already makes enough of a problem. So what do? You answer, you say back to the person, Esmol hayakach v'kach. Yesterday was such and such. So if today's 17, I say yesterday was 16. Of course, it makes it difficult on the first night. Yesterday was
Zero.
I guess, what do you do? So you say yesterday was such and such, and that way people usually can add one to know what today is, and you don't get any issues with having counted before you said your blessing. Because if you're going to say today is 25, 30, whatever happens to be that day, you won't be able to make a blessing afterwards when you count, because you've counted already. You did the mitzvah already. Okay. Dalet, number 4. Now, before you make a blessing, you should know what blessing you're making. Now, this doesn't only apply to sphere, it applies to anything. Let's say someone's eating an apple, and they don't know is the apple ha'etz or a dama, they don't know what the blessing is, and they're just going to start the bracha, and someone else is going to prompt them. So, look, at a certain stage when someone's learning, maybe that's the least worst or best situation. But ideally, a person should know before they start the blessing, and for sure once they say Hashem's name in the blessing, what blessing are they actually making. And likewise, over here, when it comes to counting, we should know what number we're counting before we say the blessing. So it's actually, we know what we're saying the blessing on. And just by the way, since this is counting and not, davening, if a person doesn't understand the Hebrew words, they can count in whatever language they know. I mean, if you know these words means tonight is 17th night, even though you don't know which word is which, that's okay, because you know this is counting the numbers and you know what number you're counting. But there's plenty of people who count in their first language, and there's no problems with that. So ideally, before we make the blessing, we should know what number we're counting. The Haino, Shiyad Kama Yom, who is Sphira, knows we should know exactly how many days into the Sphira we are. Now, Bidi Evid, after the fact, okay, I don't know what we're counting. So what's going to happen? Imla Yada Pasach Avarech Al Deas Das Yisbod Kamosh Yishma Chavei. My intention is there's a guy next to me in shul or wherever, and I'm going to start saying the blessing, and I'm going to have one ear listening to him, and whatever blessing he says, whatever number he says after the blessing, I'm going to say the same number. That's his intention. He starts making the bracha, the blessing, without knowing what number we're counting, but with the idea that he's going to hear the number from someone else, and he'll just say what the other person said. So Gam Kem Yotza. So in that case, after the fact, that fulfills the obligation. That's if you didn't have a wrong number in mind, right? You're just going to listen to him and you'll say the number. V'chein, likewise, im barach al das lisboy arba yom. For example, let's say, you thought today was the 4th night. So I say the bracha intending to count number 4. And after my blessing, which I said with the intention to count 4, I realize, either through hearing someone else or I remembered, today's actually the 5th. No problem. You can count 5 and you don't have to make another bracha, even though the bracha was for a different number. But at the end of the day, the bracha was you were saying a blessing on counting the correct sphera. You realize you made an error, no problem. V'chein im tab sphera. Likewise, if you actually made a mistake. So back to, I was going to give an example. Going, for example. You were meant to say today's the 6th day of the Omer. But by mistake, you said today's the 5th day. Now, in this kamiyad, if you realized immediately, so actually the length of time is the time it takes to say the words, Shalom Alecha Rebbe. So it's, 3 seconds, So in other words, either you heard someone else, you remembered, so you say, today is so you're meant to say 5th, by mistake it's 6th. You said today is the 6th day of the Omer. Oh, no, today's the 5th day of the Omer. So you correct it straight away. Then, as you correct it straight away, Sefer Karoi, you counted what you're meant to count. Then the Sarchel Baruch Shenis. Then you don't need to make a new bracha, because the bracha is close enough in time. Avol, however, im hifsik katsas, if there's a time lapse, 10 minutes later, it doesn't have to be 10 minutes, even 30 seconds, but you afterwards you realize, after some time has passed, then Sarchel Baruch Shenis, you have to make a second blessing, second bracha, because the first bracha you didn't count. It was by counting the wrong numbers, the same as not counting at all. Okay. Clear? Not too technical? We're good?
Oh, yeah.
All right, so let's squeeze in one more. One more. Chol Yontov Imchal Rishon B'Shabbos. When the first night Yontov falls out in the Shabbos, Shen Omim Az Ma'arvis, and there's certain extra prayers Kamaravis that we skip out. Now, probably most people, it's like different poetic things. I'm not really sure that. I'm sure there's some congregations have them somewhere. Some congregations that say everything optional, and the page numbers and the commentary. Make sure it's the longest service possible. But I don't think anyone really says them anyway nowadays. And so I think we'll skip that. There's an exception we do say on Pesach because it speaks about the Omer.
Let me ask you, what are we so busy? What are we so busy with these days on Yom Tov that it is like so inconceivable to us that you look at these pages of all these piyutim? Like, when did anybody say all of this? And
well, I think what happens, I think particularly like if you look at an art scroll marks or something like that, what happened is that every little community, they had their customs of which piyutim they said. When they started to print machzorim or sidurim with piyutim in the back, they really wanted to print them en masse. Wanted not just a siddur for this community, but for everyone. So what they started doing is you put in everything. And this community would say these ones, and the community said other ones. And I think what's happened, and again, break work in a changed Jewish printing. It's a wonderful thing. But what ended up happening is you ended up putting every piyut that exists. That I don't think there was anyone who ever said all of them. But now all of a sudden, as people say, well, now should we use Askar Machzor? So they say everything, and you have Yom Kippur morning service from 7:30 in the morning till 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and it's okay. I mean, it's not the worst thing in the world, but I don't think anyone ever sort of really did that historically. So I think that's how it is, and different communities say different things. It's there's the skeleton, there's the main part of the service, which is pretty much unchanging. You have maybe different communities a slight different word here, a slight word here, but these are the additional pieces. My family comes from my father's family comes from a Polish, say the least piyutim. It's that's the least. All right. So we'll see everyone tomorrow, God willing. And we'll keep going.
Thank you,
Thank you, Rabbi.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Thank you.
Welcome.